A full moon illuminated the desert sky over Qatar, its silvery glow reflecting off the marble palaces and luxurious skyscrapers of Doha. The night was vibrant, marked by an exclusive party in the heart of a palace belonging to Rashid Al Fayez, one of the most influential and wealthy sheikhs in the Middle East. Rashid was known for his sophistication and power, but also for an emptiness that no amount of wealth seemed to fill. At 38, he managed a multi-billion-dollar business empire, yet deep inside there was something incomplete, a silent search for something he could not define. That night, as Qatar's elite laughed and danced under the golden lights of the hall, Rashid noticed something unusual. Among the professional dancers hired to entertain the guests, one woman caught his attention. It wasn't her stunning beauty or graceful movements, though she had both, but the intensity in her eyes, a mixture of pain and determination she tried to hide. This woman was Layla, a 29-year-old single mother who had faced unimaginable hardships. Since the father of her child abandoned her, she worked tirelessly to support little Amir, who was only 5 years old. Her days were filled with sacrifices, and her nights were often spent performing at luxurious events where she pretended to belong to a world that could never truly be hers. But what Layla didn't know was that this encounter would change her life forever. The attentive gaze of the sheikh seemed to pierce through her soul, and an unexpected proposition was about to be made, one that would pull her out of the shadows and thrust her into a whirlwind of emotions, secrets, and unimaginable luxuries. The music in the hall was vibrant, a mix of traditional Middle Eastern rhythms and modern beats that filled the space with energy. The golden walls of the palace reflected the light from crystal chandeliers, creating a spectacle of luxury that left the guests in awe. Rashid, seated in a reserved section of the hall, observed everything with a distant look, while twirling a crystal glass between his fingers. He was used to parties like this: excess, luxury, and fake smiles. Nothing seemed to impress him anymore. However, that night, something was different. Among the professional dancers spinning around the hall, one figure caught his attention: Layla. She moved gracefully, but her eyes revealed something no choreography could hide. There was an internal struggle there, a sadness that seemed out of place in the dazzling atmosphere of the party. Rashid couldn't take his eyes off her. It was as if her presence carried a magnetism he couldn't explain. As the music softened, Layla finished her performance and began to discreetly leave the center of the hall. Before she could disappear into the crowd, Rashid signaled to his assistant, Omar, "Find out who she is. I want to speak with her," Rashid ordered. A few minutes later, Omar returned with a curious expression. "Her name is Layla, sir. She's a dancer, but she seems different. She doesn't carry the same carefree demeanor as the others." Intrigued, Rashid gestured for her to be brought to him. Layla hesitated when summoned. The calculating gaze of the sheikh made her feel as though she was being analyzed, as if he could see right through her. She adjusted the scarf draped lightly over her shoulders and walked toward him, keeping her head held high. "Layla, correct?" Rashid's deep voice broke the silence, laden with authority. "Yes, sir," she replied, her tone respectful but firm. "You dance well. But what intrigued me was your intensity. There's something in your eyes that doesn't match this environment." Layla took a deep breath. It wasn't the first time she'd encountered wealthy men trying to decipher her, but something about Rashid seemed different. He wasn't aggressive or condescending. He appeared genuinely curious. "Maybe because I'm here out of necessity, not choice," she replied, with a sincerity that surprised even herself. Rashid raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Necessity? Tell me more." Layla hesitated. Exposing her story wasn't something she did easily, but there was something about his gaze that felt trustworthy. "I'm a single mother. I have a young son to support. Dancing at events like this is how I pay the bills." There was a brief silence. Rashid hadn't expected that answer. Something inside him stirred. Perhaps empathy, perhaps admiration. He leaned forward slightly. "How much do you earn for a night like this?" She swallowed hard, surprised by the question. "Not enough, sir." Rashid gave a faint smile, as if he'd expected her response. "Then allow me to make you an offer. I want you to dance exclusively for me at an event I'm organizing next week. The payment will be adequate." Layla was surprised but maintained her composure. "Adequate? Twice what you earn in a night like this," Rashid replied firmly. She hesitated. An offer like that could change her life, at least temporarily, but she knew nothing in the world of the wealthy came without a price. "I accept," she finally said, "but on one condition. I do nothing but dance." Rashid tilted his head in a sign of respect. "Agreed." As she walked away, he felt there was something special about this woman, something he needed to uncover. Layla's car moved slowly through the streets of Doha as she gazed out the window, trying to process everything that had happened that evening. The opulence of the palace, the intense gaze of Sheikh Rashid, and the proposal that could be the solution to her financial struggles. All of it felt surreal. When she arrived home, she was greeted by the soft sound of her son Amir's breathing. The 5-year-old was fast asleep on a small couch. The apartment was modest, with plain walls and old furniture, but every corner held a personal touch. Amir's drawings taped to the refrigerator, toys scattered on the floor, and a photo of Layla with her parents, taken years ago when she still believed her dreams were possible. She sat beside her son and watched him sleep. Amir was her reason for enduring so much. Ever since his father had abandoned her upon learning of her pregnancy, Layla had learned to survive on her own. She worked as a waitress, a seamstress, and more recently as a dancer at luxurious events where the wealthy saw her as little more than a piece of entertainment, never imagining the story she carried. But something about tonight was different. Rashid Al-Fayez wasn't just another rich man seeking distraction. There was something in his gaze, an almost disarming curiosity, that suggested he saw her as more than a performer. For the first time, someone seemed interested in her as a person, not just in her appearance or her performance. As Layla adjusted the blanket over Amir, her mind returned to Rashid's words. "I want you to dance exclusively for me." Why would he make such an offer? She wasn't naive about the realities of the world she lived in. She knew stories of powerful men who used their wealth to manipulate others. But Rashid seemed different, or was he simply better at hiding his true intentions? In the days that followed, Layla tried to maintain her routine, but the anxiety was undeniable. She spent hours rehearsing, perfecting every movement. Though the money Rashid offered was tempting, her intuition warned her to be cautious. The world of the wealthy was full of traps, and she knew a single wrong choice could cost her dearly. Meanwhile, in Rashid's luxurious office, he found himself unable to get Layla out of his mind. Her sincerity intrigued him, and he wanted to understand more about the woman who seemed so out of place in his world. He instructed Omar to discreetly investigate her background. "I want information, but nothing invasive," Rashid said, signing a stack of documents. "Just enough to ensure my trust isn't misplaced." Omar hesitated but complied. "As you wish, sir." Days later, Rashid received a report. Layla was the daughter of 2 teachers and had been raised in a humble village in Qatar. Her life had taken a drastic turn when she lost her parents in a car accident at the age of 18. Since then, she had dedicated herself to surviving and raising her son. It was clear she wasn't an opportunist, but a woman determined to fight against the odds. As Rashid finished reading, he felt something he rarely experienced: admiration. He decided he would do whatever it took to help Layla, but first he needed to earn her trust. On the eve of the event, Layla received an unexpected gift, a stunning dress accompanied by a handwritten note. "Just a reminder of the value you hold. See you tomorrow, Rashid." She held the note, feeling a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Who was Rashid Al-Fayez really, and what did he want from her? The night of the event arrived, and Layla felt a mixture of nerves and anticipation as she observed the immense illuminated palace from a distance. The dress Rashid had sent her fit perfectly, a soft, flowing fabric in a sapphire blue that brought out her eyes. It was something she could never afford, yet it was also a stark reminder of the vast differences between their worlds. As she entered the palace, Omar greeted her with his usual professionalism and escorted her through marble-lined corridors with towering glass windows. The scale of the luxury surrounding her was overwhelming, even after all the events she had performed at. Each detail seemed designed to impress, a display of wealth she could hardly fathom. Layla was led to a private hall, far from the curious eyes of the other guests. Rashid was waiting for her, dressed impeccably in traditional attire, his demeanor calm, but his eyes sharp and focused. He gestured for her to sit in one of the leather armchairs near a table set with ornate trays of tea and Arabic sweets. "I hope you like the gift," he said with a faint smile. "It's beautiful," Layla replied, keeping her tone formal. "But a dress like this doesn't fit my reality." "Maybe that's because your reality needs to change," Rashid said firmly. "And that's why we're here." Layla raised an eyebrow, uncertain of his intentions. "I thought this was just a performance." Rashid leaned forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. "Initially it was, but the more I've thought about you, the more I realize I want to offer something more." Layla's pulse quickened. "Something more. I want to help you leave the life you're living. I want to offer stability for you and your son," Rashid stated. His voice was calm, but filled with conviction. Layla blinked, stunned by the unexpected proposal. "And what do you expect in return?" Rashid leaned back, folding his hands. "Honesty, that's all. I know it might seem improbable, but I have no ulterior motives. I want to be someone you can trust." She let out a short laugh, lacking humor. "Someone like you, so powerful and far removed from the real world, expects me to believe there are no hidden intentions." Rashid wasn't offended. Instead, he poured her a glass of tea before responding. "I understand your skepticism, and it's justified. But believe me, the wealth I have hasn't brought me the things that truly matter. And when I see you, I see someone who hasn't let the hardships of life corrupt her. That's rare, Layla." She studied him carefully, still unsure whether she could trust his words, but there was something about the way he spoke that seemed sincere. "And how do you plan to help someone like me?" she asked cautiously. Rashid stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the shimmering skyline of Doha. "I want to offer you an opportunity to build something that doesn't depend on dancing to support your son. If you accept my help, I can provide the resources you need to change your life." Layla hesitated. It was a dream she'd never dared to imagine, but at the same time, it seemed far too dangerous to trust someone she barely knew. "This sounds too good to be true," she said softly. Rashid turned to face her, his expression serious. "Perhaps it does. But sometimes, Layla, fate places the right people in our paths. The choice is yours." She took a deep breath, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. The offer was irresistible, but accepting it meant stepping into a world she didn't fully understand. "I need time to think," she finally replied. Rashid smiled faintly, respecting her hesitation. "Take all the time you need. But remember, the doors of this palace will always be open to you." As Layla left the palace that night, her heart was torn between fear and hope. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty for Layla. She avoided looking at the sapphire blue dress Rashid had sent her, now hanging in the small closet of her modest apartment. Each time Amir, her son, ran around the house with his makeshift toys, she wondered if accepting the Sheik's offer would be the right choice. One morning, while sipping her simple cup of coffee, her phone rang. It was an unexpected call from Omar, Rashid's trusted assistant. "The Sheik would like to know if you've reached a decision," Omar said, his tone polite but firm. "He is willing to meet with you again if you need more information." Layla hesitated, but knew the realities of her financial struggles. "Tell him I'll be there tonight," she replied. That evening, Layla arrived at the palace once again, but this time the setting was different. There were no grand parties or lavish decorations. Rashid awaited her in a private garden illuminated by soft lanterns that swayed gently in the desert breeze. In the center of the space, a simple table was prepared with tea and traditional sweets. "Thank you for coming, Layla," Rashid said, rising to his feet as she entered. "I wanted a quiet place where we could talk." Layla sat down, still slightly on edge. The scent of jasmine in the air was almost hypnotic, but her mind remained alert. "So, what more do you want me to know before I make my decision?" she asked directly. Rashid gave a faint smile, clearly impressed by her straightforwardness. "I want you to know that my offer is about more than money. I want to give you something no one else has offered you, the chance to take control of your life." "Why me?" Layla asked, arching an eyebrow. Rashid paused, choosing his words carefully. "Because I see something in you that is missing in many of the people I know. Authenticity. You don't pretend to be someone you're not. And honestly, I admire that." Layla diverted her gaze, struggling with the emotions that began to rise. His sincerity was unsettling, but at the same time, she couldn't bring herself to fully trust him. "I'm not used to people like you, Rashid," she admitted. "People who say they want to help without expecting something in return. Maybe that's because I'm used to people who only want something from me," Rashid replied, his voice tinged with a quiet sadness. "Maybe helping you is my way of reminding myself of who I am, or who I want to be." Layla stayed silent for a moment, absorbing his words. The tension between them was palpable, but there was nothing threatening about it. Instead, there was a growing mutual understanding between two people from completely different worlds. "And if I accept?" she asked finally. Rashid smiled, pleased with her question. "If you accept, I want to help you build something that gives you and Amir stability, something that makes you independent, so you'll never have to depend on anyone, not even me." Layla raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "That sounds more like a charity mission than a partnership." Rashid chuckled softly. "Maybe it is. But for me, it's more than that." Their conversation continued late into the night as they shared more about their lives. Rashid spoke about the pressures of being a leader in a world where appearances were everything, and Layla shared the sacrifices she had made to raise Amir. With every word exchanged, the distance between their worlds seemed to shrink, their connection growing stronger. By the end of the evening, Layla made her decision. "I'll accept your help," she said with a shy smile. "But only if you're completely transparent with me about everything." Rashid nodded, his respect for her growing. Always. As she left the palace, Layla felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. For the first time, she wasn't merely surviving, she was beginning to believe she could truly live. In the days that followed, Layla found herself stepping into a new world, one of luxury that felt like a distant dream, now suddenly within reach. Rashid had arranged everything for her transition to a more stable life. The first step was moving her and Amir into a comfortable apartment in one of Doha's quieter, more refined neighborhoods. However, Layla wasn't quick to accept everything without questioning it. "I can't just live in a place like this, Rashid," she said firmly when he showed her the apartment. "It doesn't feel right." "It's right if it helps you build a future," he replied calmly. "Think of this as an investment in you and Amir." Despite her initial resistance, Layla insisted that the costs of the apartment be deducted from her future income. She didn't want to feel indebted to anyone, not even Rashid. When Layla first stepped into the apartment, she couldn't help but be awestruck. The space was modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city skyline. Inside, the decor was tasteful yet understated, a sharp contrast to the small, cramped apartment she had left behind. Amir, wide-eyed with excitement, darted from room to room, marveling at the spaciousness and the new toys Rashid had thoughtfully provided. "Mama, is this really ours?" Amir asked, clutching a small teddy bear he'd just found. Layla knelt beside him, pulling him close. "It is, my love. But remember, Mama still has to work hard to make sure we can stay here, okay?" While Amir explored, Layla felt a pang of discomfort. It wasn't that she wasn't grateful, but this new reality felt fragile, as if it could shatter at any moment. Accepting help was almost as hard for her as enduring her past struggles. Rashid, meanwhile, was determined to show Layla that she could navigate this new reality without losing herself. He began inviting her to events, private dinners, and meetings with business leaders, where she could observe and learn how his world operated. "Why are you bringing me to these places?" she asked during one such evening at a luxurious reception in a five-star hotel. "Because I want you to see how this world works," Rashid replied with a faint smile. "You're stronger and smarter than you realize. It's time to show the world what you're capable of." Despite Rashid's encouragement, Layla couldn't help but feel the glaring differences between her and the people around her. The women in their elegant gowns, the men in their polished suits, they all seemed to fit seamlessly into this life of privilege. Meanwhile, Layla noticed their whispers and judgmental glances, each one a reminder that she was an outsider. "They're looking at me like I don't belong here," she murmured to Rashid. He leaned closer, his voice soft but firm. "Don't worry about them. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, just be yourself." While Layla slowly adapted to her new surroundings, she grappled with conflicting emotions. She was grateful for Rashid's support, but she also feared losing her independence. She wasn't used to relying on anyone, and the idea of becoming dependent on him frightened her. One evening, she decided to confront him about it. "Rashid, I need to be honest with you. I'm afraid of getting used to all of this and forgetting who I am," she admitted. He listened carefully before replying. "I'm not here to change you, Layla. I want to help you find the path that's always been yours. And if one day you feel you no longer need my help, I'll be proud to see you succeed on your own." His sincerity disarmed her. Rashid wasn't just another wealthy man trying to control her life. He genuinely wanted her to thrive, even if it meant stepping aside someday. As Layla tried to balance her past with her present, she decided to keep certain reminders of her old life in her new apartment. A simple dress she used to wear for her dance performances, pictures of her parents, and Amir's older, worn-out drawings. These small items were her way of staying grounded, a reminder of where she had come from and what truly mattered. Meanwhile, her connection with Rashid deepened. He was no longer just a benefactor. He had become a confidant, someone who believed in her even when she doubted herself. But Layla couldn't ignore the feeling that life alongside a man like Rashid would never be simple. There were shadows in his past that she hadn't yet uncovered, and she sensed that their journey together was far from over. Layla was starting to feel more at ease with her new routine, but something about Rashid continued to intrigue her. Despite his generosity and apparent sincerity, he carried an air of mystery. It was as if, beneath his calm demeanor, there were unresolved secrets he kept buried. One evening, as they were discussing plans for her new cultural event business, a project Rashid had encouraged her to pursue, his phone rang. The call visibly unsettled him. Without giving her any details, Rashid excused himself and retreated to his private office, where he stayed for hours. Layla respected his need for privacy, but the change in his behavior left her feeling uneasy. The following night, Rashid invited Layla and Amir to a quiet dinner at the palace, intending to create a more relaxed atmosphere. While Amir was excited, chattering about the toys Rashid had gifted him, Layla couldn't shake the sense that something was weighing heavily on the sheik. Midway through the meal, Amir looked up at Rashid with wide eyes and said innocently, "Uncle Rashid, did you know my mum dances really well? She always dances for me when I'm sad." Rashid smiled at the boy's innocence, though a hint of sadness flickered in his expression. "I'm sure your mum is the best dancer in the world," he said, ruffling Amir's hair. Layla observed the exchange, her heart softening but her mind still troubled. Rashid's warmth toward Amir was genuine, yet it made his guarded moments feel even more puzzling. After the meal, Rashid asked to speak with Layla privately. They moved to a serene garden within the palace, where lanterns cast a soft glow over the lush greenery. "There's something you need to know," Rashid began, his voice heavy with seriousness. Layla felt her chest tighten. "What is it?" Rashid took a deep breath before speaking. "Remember the woman I told you about, the one I hurt in the past? I finally found her." Layla was taken aback. "That's good, isn't it? Now you can apologize, make amends. Rashid turned his gaze to the ground, struggling with the weight of what he was about to reveal. It's not that simple. She has a connection to you, Layla. Her heart raced. What kind of connection? Rashid hesitated, then met her eyes. She is the sister of Amir's father. The words hit Layla like a blow. Memories of Amir's father, the man who had abandoned her and their unborn child, came rushing back. The pain, the betrayal, the struggles she had faced alone. You're telling me that the woman you hurt is my son's aunt? Layla's voice wavered. Rashid nodded. I didn't know you were connected until now, and to be honest, it makes everything even more complicated. Layla rose from her seat, her mind spinning. Why didn't you tell me this before? Why did you wait until now? Because I didn't know how, Rashid admitted, and because I was afraid this would destroy the trust we were building. Layla crossed her arms, her emotions a mixture of frustration and sadness. Rashid, I trusted you, and now, to find out that our lives are tied together in this way, I don't know what to think. Layla, please, Rashid pleaded, standing as well. I'm only trying to make things right, for her, for you, for Amir. I didn't choose this connection, but I can't ignore it either. Please don't let this change what we've started. Layla took a deep breath, her thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and doubt. I need time to think, Rashid. This is too much. The days that followed were difficult for Layla. She tried to focus on her work and Amir, but the weight of Rashid's revelation lingered in her mind. The connection between their pasts was too close, too personal. Meanwhile, Rashid knew he had to act. He decided to meet with the woman from his past, Nadia, Amir's aunt, to confront his mistakes and seek her forgiveness. When Rashid arrived at Nadia's modest home, she greeted him with a cold, wary expression. So, you finally decided to show up, she said sharply. After all these years, you think you can just walk into my life and apologize? Rashid didn't flinch at her bitterness. I don't expect you to forgive me, Nadia, but I want you to know that I regret what I did, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make amends. Nadia crossed her arms, her gaze hard and unforgiving. Make amends? You can't undo what you did. Do you have any idea how much damage you caused? I know I can't change the past, Rashid admitted, his tone heavy, but I can try to fix what's left of it. If there's anything I can do for you, for your family, tell me. Nadia hesitated, then finally said, if you really want to make things right, start by taking care of the consequences of your actions, because they didn't end with me. Rashid knew she was referring to Layla and Amir. The revelation had shaken not only Layla's trust, but also the foundation of her relationship with Rashid. While they both tried to process the truth, one question loomed over them. Could they overcome the weight of their intertwined pasts and find a way forward together? Rashid stood on the balcony of his private suite, gazing out at the vast desert under the pale glow of the moonlight. The warm breeze swept across his face, but it failed to soothe the storm raging inside him. For years, he had built a life of power and prestige, yet now he felt more vulnerable than ever. Layla had become a pivotal presence in his life. She wasn't like anyone he had ever known, unafraid to challenge him, uninterested in his wealth, and above all, genuine. But with the truth about Nadia and their shared connection to Layla now revealed, Rashid felt the cracks in his carefully constructed world widening. How could he ask Layla to trust him after everything she had endured? Worse still, how could he reconcile his past mistakes with the future he wanted to build with her? The next morning, Rashid summoned Omar to his office. His assistant immediately sensed the tension in his demeanor. "Is something troubling you, sir?" Omar asked cautiously. Rashid remained silent for a moment before finally speaking. "Omar, have you ever wondered if what we do, what I've built, truly has value?" Omar was taken aback. In all the years he had worked for Rashid, he had never heard him express such doubt. "Sir, what you've achieved has brought opportunities and progress to many people. You've created jobs, supported communities, and destroyed lives in the process," Rashid interrupted, his voice heavy with regret. I've been so focused on ambition that I didn't stop to think about the consequences of my choices. Omar hesitated, then replied with quiet honesty. We all make mistakes, sir, but the important thing is what you do with the power you have now. Rashid nodded slowly, but the weight of his guilt lingered. He thought of Layla and Amir, of Nadia, and the pain she had endured. Redemption felt like an insurmountable task, yet he knew he had to try. To clear his mind, Rashid decided to invite Layla to his desert retreat, a private sanctuary far removed from the extravagance of his palace. He wanted her to see a different side of him, one that wasn't defined by wealth or status. When Layla arrived at the retreat, she was struck by its serene beauty. The house, nestled among the dunes, was a masterpiece of minimalist architecture with large glass walls that offered panoramic views of the golden sands. Despite its luxury, the place exuded a sense of calm that put her at ease. "Why did you bring me here?" Layla asked as they walked along the terrace under the star-filled sky. "I needed a break," Rashid admitted, "and I thought you might appreciate some peace as well." Layla gave him a searching look. "Are you running from something?" Rashid chuckled softly, though there was no humor in his tone. "Maybe, but more than that, I'm trying to understand something." "And what's that?" He stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. "How to fix the mistakes I've made without destroying what I have now." Layla regarded him silently for a moment, her heart softening despite the turmoil she still felt. "Maybe it's not about fixing everything, Rashid," she said gently. "Some things can't be undone, but you can do what's within your power to be better, here and now." Rashid studied her, her words resonating deeply. "You're right," he said at last, "but sometimes the weight of what we carry feels unbearable. Then you share the burden," Layla replied simply. Her answer surprised him with its clarity. For the first time, Rashid realized he didn't have to face his demons alone. That evening, as Rashid watched Layla laugh and play with a group of Bedouin children from a nearby village, he made a decision. He couldn't continue living in the shadow of his past. He needed to change, not just for himself, but for Layla, Amir, and the future he hoped to build with them. When Layla returned to the terrace, Rashid turned to her with newfound determination. "Layla, I want you to know that your presence in my life has changed everything, and no matter what happens, I'll never let my past hurt you or Amir." Layla felt a lump in her throat at the sincerity in his voice. She reached out and placed her hand over his. "And I'll never let you face this alone." As they sat together under the desert stars, Rashid and Layla both knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There were still challenges to face, and the scars of the past would not heal overnight. But they also knew that together they could weather whatever storms came their way. For Rashid, it was the beginning of a transformation, a chance to rewrite his story and create a future built on trust, love, and redemption. Layla had never felt closer to anyone than she did to Rashid. Despite her initial doubts, she had grown to see him as more than a powerful sheik. He was a man trying to atone for his mistakes, someone who sought redemption and purpose. Yet, as their connection deepened, Layla couldn't ignore a lingering unease, the feeling that there was still more to Rashid's past than he had shared. Her suspicions were confirmed one afternoon when Rashid received a phone call that visibly unsettled him. Though he brushed it off and said it was business, Layla noticed how distracted he became afterward. She didn't press him, but the change in his demeanor was undeniable. Later that week, Layla returned to her apartment to find a small envelope slipped under her door. Her name was written on it in bold, unfamiliar handwriting. She hesitated before opening it, and what she found inside made her stomach drop. The envelope contained photographs, old images of Rashid with a woman Layla didn't recognize, standing close to each other in moments that seemed intimate. Accompanying the photos was a handwritten note. "Do you really know the man you're trusting?" Layla stared at the photographs, her heart racing. She recognized Rashid's younger face immediately, and while she didn't want to jump to conclusions, the images stirred a flood of doubts. Amir, playing with his toys in the living room, was oblivious to his mother's growing distress. Layla sat at the kitchen table, staring at the photos and the note, questions swirling in her mind. Who had sent them, and why now? That evening, Layla arrived at Rashid's palace unannounced, the envelope clutched tightly in her hand. She found him in his office, seated at his desk and surrounded by papers. He looked up as she entered, his expression softening until he saw the concern etched on her face. "Layla, what's wrong?" he asked, standing up. Without a word, she placed the envelope on his desk. Rashid opened it, his face darkening as he recognized the photographs. "Where did you get these?" he asked, his tone calm but edged with tension. "They were left at my door," Layla replied. "I want to believe that this is just someone trying to create trouble. But Rashid, I need to know. Is there something you haven't told me?" Rashid sighed deeply, setting the photographs down. "I didn't want you to find out this way," he admitted. "But no, I haven't hidden anything from you. These photos are from years ago. The woman in them is Nadia." Layla's chest tightened at the name. "Amir's aunt," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Rashid confirmed. "These were taken before everything fell apart. Nadia and I were friends, but I made decisions that hurt her deeply. Whoever sent you these photos is trying to exploit the past to divide us." Layla crossed her arms, her emotions conflicted. "Do you really believe that's all this is? Someone trying to create doubt between us?" "Yes," Rashid replied firmly, "and I won't let them succeed. I've made mistakes, Layla, but you and Amir are my future now. I won't let my past hurt either of you." Layla wanted to believe him, but the photographs and the anonymous note had shaken her. "Rashid, this is more than I was prepared for. I need time to process all of this." Rashid nodded, understanding her hesitation. "Take all the time you need," he said gently. "But please don't let someone else's manipulations make you doubt what we've built." Rashid knew the photographs were no coincidence. He suspected they had been sent by Khaled, his longtime rival, who had been trying to undermine him for years. Khaled was known for his underhanded tactics, and Rashid was certain this was his way of exploiting Rashid's vulnerability, his growing bond with Layla. "Omar," Rashid said later that night, summoning his assistant, "I need you to find out who delivered those photographs to Layla, and I want every detail on Khaled's latest activities." Omar nodded, his expression grim. "I'll get on it immediately, sir." As Omar left to carry out his orders, Rashid leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. He knew Khaled wouldn't stop until he achieved his goal of ruining Rashid's reputation and destabilizing his empire. But now, Khaled had crossed a line by dragging Layla and Amir into his schemes. Back in her apartment, Layla sat awake long after Amir had gone to bed. She replayed Rashid's words in her mind, trying to decide whether to trust him. Her instincts told her that Rashid genuinely cared for her and her son, but the weight of the past hung heavily between them. She thought of Amir's father, who had abandoned her without a second thought. Could Rashid be any different, or was she risking everything by allowing him into her life? As dawn approached, Layla made a decision. She would stand by Rashid for now, but she would also demand the truth at every step. If they were going to build a future together, it had to be based on complete honesty. Rashid was right. Khaled, his longtime rival, was behind the photographs. For years, Khaled had sought to undermine Rashid's reputation and seize control of the alliances that Rashid had painstakingly built. Now, he saw an opportunity to exploit the Sheik's growing attachment to Layla and Amir as a way to dismantle his image. Khaled orchestrated a subtle but effective campaign. He spread rumors among Doha's elite, suggesting that Rashid's relationship with Layla was scandalous, hinting that her presence in his life stemmed from an ulterior motive. He whispered about Nadia's history with Rashid, spinning the truth into damaging fabrications. The whispers grew louder, reaching Rashid's business partners and even some members of his family. One afternoon, Layla found another anonymous envelope slipped under her apartment door. This time, it contained a printed article draft detailing Rashid's improprieties. with her and Nadia. The text twisted facts and presented her as a manipulative woman exploiting the sheikh for personal gain. Layla's heart sank as she read the malicious lies. She knew this was Khalid's doing, but the pain of seeing herself depicted as a villain was overwhelming. When Rashid arrived later that evening, Layla confronted him with the draft in hand. "Look at this, Rashid. They're not just targeting you anymore, they're coming after me." Rashid took the paper, his jaw tightening as he read. "This is Khaled," he said, his voice low and controlled. "He's desperate to ruin me, and now he's dragging you and Amir into it." Layla crossed her arms, her voice filled with frustration. "I won't be a pawn in this, Rashid. If this is what it means to be a part of your world, then Don't say it," Rashid interrupted, stepping closer to her. "Don't let Khalid's lies drive a wedge between us. That's exactly what he wants." Layla met his intense gaze, torn between her growing trust in Rashid and the fear of being swept into a life she couldn't control. "Then what do we do, Rashid? How do we stop him?" "We fight back," Rashid said firmly. Rashid began gathering evidence to dismantle Khalid's web of deceit. He enlisted Omar and a team of trusted investigators to unearth the details of Khalid's shady business dealings. Rashid knew Khalid wasn't as untouchable as he pretended to be. His empire was built on corruption, and Rashid was determined to expose it. While Rashid worked on the offensive, Layla decided to take a stand in her own way. She agreed to accompany Rashid to a high-profile charity gala, knowing full well that the event would be crawling with journalists eager to fuel the rumors. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Rashid asked as they prepared for the evening. Layla straightened her shoulders, determination in her eyes. "I've faced worse than gossip, Rashid. Let them look, let them talk. I'm not afraid." At the gala, the tension was palpable. Rashid and Layla entered arm in arm, and the room buzzed with whispers. Reporters hovered, eager for a soundbite or a scandalous photo. Rashid, sensing the moment was ripe, stepped onto the stage. His voice was calm but commanding as he addressed the crowd. "There have been rumors circulating about my personal life and my relationship with Layla," he began. "I want to set the record straight. Layla is a woman of strength, resilience, and integrity. She is not only a partner in my life, but an inspiration to me." The crowd fell silent, surprised by his candor. "And as for those who spread lies and manipulate the truth for their own gain," Rashid continued, his tone hardening, "know this, your tactics will not work. The truth always prevails." Layla, watching from the sidelines, felt a surge of pride. For the first time she realized that Rashid wasn't just defending himself, he was defending her as well. Behind the scenes, Omar's team had uncovered damning evidence of Khalid's corruption. Contracts forged, funds embezzled, and unethical business practices, all meticulously documented. Rashid handed the evidence to key allies and trusted journalists, ensuring that Khalid's wrongdoings would come to light. Days later, Khalid was confronted by the media. The scandal was unavoidable, and his carefully curated reputation crumbled overnight. Investors withdrew their support, and his allies abandoned him, unwilling to be associated with the fallout. For Rashid, the victory was bittersweet. Khalid's actions had caused pain and turmoil, but his defeat marked the end of a threat that had loomed over their lives. With Khalid out of the picture, Rashid and Layla could finally breathe. At the palace, they sat together on the terrace watching the stars above the desert. "I'm sorry you were dragged into this," Rashid said, his voice filled with regret. Layla took his hand, her grip firm. "I'm not," she said. "We faced it together, and that's what matters." Rashid looked at her, admiration shining in his eyes. "You're the strongest person I've ever met, Layla. I don't deserve you." Layla smiled softly. "Maybe not, but we deserve this. A chance to build something real." As the desert wind swept around them, they both felt a sense of closure. The battle was over, but their journey was just beginning. Rashid knew that while Khalid's downfall had brought them a measure of peace, it wasn't the end of their challenges. The rumors and whispers might fade, but Layla's place in his life, and Amir's as well, would always invite scrutiny. He needed to ensure their safety and their future, no matter what it took. One evening, as Rashid reviewed the final details of his business restructuring, Omar entered his office with an unusually grim expression. "Sir, I've received word that Khaled, despite his public disgrace, isn't finished. He's been reaching out to influential people, trying to turn them against you." Rashid leaned back in his chair, his jaw tightening. "He won't learn, will he?" Omar hesitated before continuing. "There's more. Khaled has been meeting with a foreign investor, someone with a history of hostile takeovers. I believe he's plotting something bigger, something to destabilize your position entirely." Rashid's mind raced. He had expected Khaled to fight back, but the involvement of external forces escalated the stakes. "Find out everything you can about this investor. I want to know who they are, what they want, and how Khaled plans to use them against me," Rashid ordered. While Rashid dealt with the brewing threat, Layla found herself more deeply involved in his world. She continued to oversee her cultural event business, which was flourishing thanks to Rashid's support, but she also began attending more of his meetings and public appearances. At first, Layla was hesitant to step into the spotlight. She knew that many of Rashid's allies were skeptical of her presence, viewing her as an outsider. But with Rashid's encouragement, she slowly gained confidence. During a meeting with several prominent investors, one of them, an older man named Abdul, openly questioned Rashid's decision to involve Layla in their discussions. "With all due respect, Sheikh Rashid, does someone with no background in business truly belong here?" Before Rashid could respond, Layla spoke up, her voice calm but firm. "With all due respect, Mr. Abdul, my background might not be in business, but I understand people. The events I organize bring together communities, bridging gaps and fostering connections. Isn't that the foundation of every successful venture?" The room fell silent, and Abdul, though initially skeptical, gave a small nod of acknowledgement. Rashid couldn't hide his pride as he glanced at Layla. As the days passed, Omar returned with troubling information. Khalid's foreign ally was a powerful investor named Viktor Ivanov, known for his ruthless business tactics and willingness to play dirty. Viktor had already acquired a minority stake in one of Rashid's smaller ventures, a foothold Khaled was planning to use as leverage. Rashid decided to act swiftly. He scheduled a meeting with Viktor, determined to confront him directly and dismantle Khaled's plans before they could take root. "I want you to be cautious, Rashid," Layla said the night before the meeting. "Men like Viktor and Khaled don't play by the same rules as you." Rashid smiled faintly, taking her hand. "I know, Layla, but I can't let fear dictate my actions. This is about protecting everything we've built." The meeting with Viktor took place in one of Doha's most exclusive hotels. The atmosphere was tense, with both men projecting calm confidence while carefully measuring their words. "You've certainly made a name for yourself, Sheikh Rashid," Viktor said, his thick accent laced with amusement. "But even kings fall if they don't watch their steps." Rashid's expression remained impassive. "And vultures often overestimate their reach. Whatever Khalid has promised you, it won't come to pass. My business stands on solid ground." Viktor chuckled. "I admire your confidence. But business isn't always about principles, is it? Sometimes it's about survival." Before the conversation could escalate further, Rashid produced a file Omar had prepared, detailed evidence of Viktor's involvement in questionable dealings abroad. "I'm sure you'd rather avoid the scrutiny this could bring," Rashid said, his tone calm but firm. "Walk away from Khaled's schemes, and this stays between us." Viktor's amused demeanor faded as he glanced through the documents. "Well played, Sheikh," he said finally, standing. "Khaled's desperation isn't worth my time anyway." With Viktor withdrawing his support, Khaled's latest plan crumbled. Rashid, now more secure in his position, used the opportunity to solidify his alliances and reinforce the foundation of his business empire. That evening, he and Layla sat together on the palace terrace, watching Amir chase fireflies in the garden below. "It's over, isn't it?" Layla asked softly. "For now," Rashid replied. "But challenges like these will always come, Layla. What matters is how we face them. Layla rested her head on his shoulder. Then we'll face them together. Rashid smiled, wrapping an arm around her. We will. With Khaled defeated once more and Victor out of the picture, Rashid and Layla could finally look to the future with hope. But they knew their journey was far from over. Their love and resilience would continue to be tested. Together, however, they were ready for whatever came next. With Khaled neutralized and the foreign threat dissolved, Rashid and Layla began to rebuild their lives on a foundation of trust and shared purpose. But Rashid was determined to ensure that his transformation extended beyond his personal life. The events of the past had exposed flaws not only in his business empire, but in how he had allowed his power to define him. One afternoon, as he sat with Layla in his private study, Rashid shared an idea that had been forming in his mind. "I want to restructure everything," he said, his tone resolute. "My business, my partnerships, even my family's legacy. I want it all to reflect the values I've learned from you and Amir." Layla smiled, her eyes filled with admiration. "And what values are those?" Rashid took her hand. "Empathy, honesty, responsibility. For too long, I prioritized success over what really matters. That ends now." Rashid began by addressing his business empire. He introduced policies that emphasized transparency and ethical practices, holding his partners to the same standards. He expanded his philanthropic efforts, focusing on education and economic opportunities for women and children, communities often overlooked in the race for wealth and power. Layla became an integral part of this transformation. Her experiences and insights gave her a unique perspective that Rashid deeply valued. Together, they established a foundation that offered support to single mothers, providing them with resources to rebuild their lives. At the foundation's grand opening, Layla stood before an audience of community leaders and families, her voice steady as she spoke. "This foundation isn't just about giving back. It's about giving hope. It's about showing people that their past don't define them and that with the right support, they can build a better future." The crowd erupted in applause, and Rashid, standing beside her, felt a swell of pride. Life at the palace took on a new rhythm. It was no longer just a place of opulence, but a home filled with warmth and laughter. Amir, now thriving in his new environment, had grown particularly close to Rashid. The boy often shadowed him, mimicking his gestures and asking endless questions about his work. "Uncle Rashid, do you think I can be like you when I grow up?" Amir asked one evening as they strolled through the palace gardens. Rashid knelt to Amir's level, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I think you can be even better, Amir, because you already have a kind heart, and that's the most important thing." Layla, watching from a distance, felt her heart swell. Rashid wasn't just a presence in their lives, he was becoming the father figure Amir had always needed. One evening, under the starry desert sky, Rashid led Layla to a quiet corner of the palace gardens. A gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine as they walked hand in hand. "Layla," Rashid began, stopping to face her, "when I met you, I thought I was giving you an opportunity to change your life, but the truth is, you've changed mine in ways I never imagined." Layla smiled softly, her eyes glistening. "You've changed mine too, Rashid, more than you'll ever know." Rashid took a deep breath and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. When he opened it, a delicate diamond ring sparkled in the moonlight. "Layla, I want to build a life with you and Amir, not just as partners, but as a family. Will you marry me?" Layla's breath caught as tears streamed down her face. She nodded, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, Rashid, 1,000 times yes." Their wedding was a blend of tradition and intimacy, held in the heart of the desert, surrounded by close friends, family, and the communities they had touched through their foundation. Nadia, once estranged from Rashid, attended as both a guest and a supporter, finally finding peace in their reconciliation. As Rashid and Layla exchanged vows under the open sky, the past no longer felt like a weight. It was a part of their journey, but it didn't define their future. Years later, as Rashid and Layla sat on the palace terrace watching the sunset over the dunes, they reflected on how far they had come. Amir, now a teenager, was excelling in school and had already started showing interest in continuing the work his mother and Rashid had begun. "Do you think we've done enough?" Rashid asked, a rare hint of doubt in his voice. Layla smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "We've done more than enough, Rashid, but the best part is, we're not finished yet." As the desert winds carried the first cool whispers of night, Rashid and Layla looked out at the horizon, knowing that their story was one of resilience, redemption, and enduring love. Together, they had built not just a life, but a legacy. Rashid and Layla had built something extraordinary, a life, a family, and a legacy that extended far beyond the walls of the palace. But as they sat together, reflecting on their journey, they knew their work was far from over. Their story wasn't just about overcoming challenges, but about creating opportunities for others to do the same. Amir had grown into a bright and compassionate teenager, eager to follow in Rashid and Layla's footsteps. He often joined them at the foundation, volunteering his time and getting to know the children and families they supported. One afternoon, while helping organize a community event, Amir turned to Rashid. "Uncle Rashid," he said, his voice thoughtful, "do you think I can take over the foundation one day?" Rashid placed a hand on his shoulder, smiling warmly. "You're already becoming the kind of person who can lead, Amir. But remember, leadership isn't about power. It's about serving others. If you hold on to that, I have no doubt you'll do great things." Layla, listening nearby, felt a wave of pride. Amir wasn't just her son anymore. He was becoming a symbol of the future they had fought so hard to build. The foundation continued to grow, reaching more communities in need across the region. Layla led initiatives that empowered single mothers, providing them with access to education, childcare, and job training. Meanwhile, Rashid used his influence to secure funding and partnerships, ensuring the foundation's long-term sustainability. At one of their annual fundraising galas, Nadia took the stage to speak. Her journey from estranged adversary to close ally had been one of healing and growth. "I once thought there was no way to recover from the pain of the past," she began. "But standing here today, seeing what this foundation has accomplished, I know that change is possible. Together, we can transform our struggles into strength, just as Rashid and Layla have done." The applause that followed was thunderous, a testament to the lives they had touched. Despite their busy lives, Rashid and Layla made it a priority to nurture their relationship. They often escaped to their desert retreat, where they could disconnect from the demands of their roles and simply enjoy each other's company. One evening, as they sat by a fire under the stars, Rashid turned to Layla, his expression tender. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" he asked. Layla smiled, her gaze fixed on the flickering flames. "All the time. And I think about how much further we can go." Rashid took her hand, kissing it gently. "With you by my side, I believe we can do anything." Their story became an inspiration to many, showing that love, perseverance, and the courage to confront the past could lead to incredible transformations. The foundation's impact continued to grow, touching lives and giving hope to those who had lost it. At their final gala of the year, Rashid and Layla stood together on stage, addressing the audience. "We started this journey as two people from different worlds," Rashid said, his voice filled with emotion. "But what we've built is proof that those differences don't matter. What matters is the commitment to make things better, not just for ourselves, but for those who come after us." Layla added, her voice steady and heartfelt, "Our pasts don't define us. What defines us is how we choose to move forward. Together we can create a world where everyone has a chance to thrive." The audience rose to their feet, applauding the couple who had turned their challenges into a beacon of hope. As the years passed, Rashid and Layla's legacy only grew. Amir, now a young man, began taking on more responsibilities within the foundation, bringing fresh ideas and energy to its mission. One evening, as the family sat together watching the sun set over the desert, Amir turned to his parents. You've shown me what it means to be strong, to care for others, and to fight for what's right. I promise to carry that forward." Rashid and Layla exchanged a proud smile. They had not only built a life together, but had planted the seeds of a future that would continue to flourish for generations. Rashid and Layla's story is one of resilience, redemption, and love. What about you? Do you believe in the power of second chances? Can love and purpose truly transform lives? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your reflections in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more stories like this. Together, we can inspire change one story at a time.